Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak on behalf of my community in the electorate of Newtown today on an issue that extends well beyond the boundaries of Newtown. And when I was elected to be the member for Newtown, I made a commitment to the people that live in the electorate that I would raise issues that were concerns to locals, even if they didn't fall within our geographic boundaries. It's now 4 years since the Australian government has been sending asylum seekers who try to reach Australia by boat to detention camps in Papua New Guinea and Nauru. And I express my absolute concern and despair by the fact that we just had a Liberal minister in this place recite the line from the national anthem that says, "For those who come across our seas with boundless plains to share," when in actual fact what we know is happening right now is that there are approximately 600 asylum seekers who have been transferred to Manus Island, Manus Island and Nauru being set up as Pacific Island offshore detention centres in Australia under the former Prime Minister John Howard's Pacific solution, and then shamefully, and if there was one thing that I wanted the Labor Party to steal all of the Greens voters back on, it would be to come out and have a humane approach to refugees and asylum seekers, so we are not the only voice, the only political party that is standing up for the rights of asylum seekers and refugees. But instead, it was federal Labor back in 2012 that reopened these detention centres, and it is now Australia that is engaging in the most inhumane act and treatment of refugees and asylum seekers that are in complete contravention of our obligations under the United Nations Refugee Convention, which Australia was one of the first signatories of back in 1954. And now what we are seeing is people living in a closed-down centre without food, without water, without adequate sanitation, and being subjected to nothing short of inhumane conditions. The constituents that contacted me raised concerns about the fact that all voices need to be added to what is the massive human rights abuses happening currently as a result of the Australian government policy on asylum seekers. Some said that it is Australia's responsibility to bring them to our shores, as the majority of these people have been found to be genuine refugees. They urged me to say, please do what you can to ensure the safe and humane treatment of these men. Another wrote, it's important to me that we take responsibility for our actions. We've already allowed these people to live in a living hell for the past 4 years, and we cannot just wash our hands clean of the responsibility we have to other human beings. Another wrote, and despite the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding, Turnbull and Shorten are just sticking to their lines, and Dutton is shouting his into every talkback radio microphone he can find. Let us be clear that there are tensions locally between the local PNG population and the people that have been sent there as a result of Labor and Liberal federal government policy when it comes to the treatment of asylum seekers and refugees. But it is important to note, and I would like to make mention of one member of my local electorate who actually has a close family connection to PNG, who reminds us that it is not actually the people of PNG that are inflicting this trauma on the people, and reminds us to not engage in fear and blaming of the human rights violations happening by the Australian government at the hands of the Australian government on the people of PNG. And I would like to send our solidarity from this Parliament to not just the people that are being held as refugees and asylum seekers in the most inhumane of conditions, but also the locals in PNG that are being subjected to this cruel and inhumane treatment and the position of this government by sending people to their country without a recognition of the human rights needs of the community that is there. It is incredibly wonderful to see protesters taking direct action, whether it be scaling the Opera House to try and unfurl banners, whether it be occupying press conferences and members of Parliament's offices, whether it be the young Labor activists that have passed a motion to call on their Labor left MPs to actually respond to and reflect the human rights concerns. I encourage everybody to keep raising their voices against the inhumane treatment of refugees and asylum seekers. The Greens are committed to seeing all refugees brought here because that is the only solution.